I'm so excited because I'm here with Perry Marshall. If you've been following my Facebook posts, you know I had to hike out a little bit to get this interview because I am in Colorado and we're flooding, but it is worth it because Perry Marshall is the expert at a number of things: Google AdWords, Facebook ads, advertising, marketing in general, and of course his new whole thesis on the 80-20 rule, and that's really what I want to talk about today. You can find out more and even get his book for only a penny. I'm going to make sure I get this right. Sell8020.com. That's SELL8020.com. So welcome to the interview and the show, Perry. So great to have you here.
Thank you. I appreciate the holistic approach that you take to everything, and I'm really glad to be here today, and I think we'll have a great conversation.
We will, thanks. So you were, or still are, of course, the guru of Google AdWords, and now I know you're doing a lot with Facebook ads. Have Google AdWords kind of gone the way of the dinosaur, or are they still relevant?
Oh, not by any means. Actually, Google is so relevant that really the problem with Google is just how competitive it is. Google Ads absolutely work, and it's a $60 billion business, and so really the challenge for people is to really learn how to use it properly because there's a lot of competition for those clicks. Well, then Facebook has really turned a corner in the last 6 months. Facebook was heavy cloud, no rain for a long time. And nobody was more disappointed about that than me, really, because we actually started really heavily researching Facebook probably 4 years ago. And for a long time, it was like, oh, well, this is really great if what you sell is entertainment and escapism and those kind of businesses. But for most businesses, not that big of a deal. But they've really changed some things, and the way that you target people has changed. So I don't imagine we're going to talk about that a lot. But Facebook is now a real viable thing now. And I predict, in fact, in August, I said, mark your calendar 2 years from now, Facebook's going to be a $20 billion company instead of a $6 billion company. And I think that's true.
Wow.
Wall Street's forcing them to really get their act together. And it's pretty good. So, and then we have this whole 80-20 thing.
Okay, well, let's go there because I got your book for a penny plus shipping, and here's what boggles my mind. I think a lot of us are really familiar with the Pareto principle and that, 80% of your results come from 20%. I'll let you explain that more. But where you really have drilled it down is you get down to your 20% and then you do 80% of that 20 and then 80% of that 20. And I feel like I'm back in algebra math at high school. And a lot of us are like entrepreneurs doing our thing. Do we really need to learn all this math? And can you break that down, how this works?
Well, yeah. So really, the math isn't that complicated, and I know there's kind of like two kinds of people that are going to be listening. There's going to be like numbers people, and even if you didn't like algebra, because as a matter of fact, I didn't like algebra and I didn't like calculus. What I found out later was I didn't like the way they were taught. Okay, I as I grew up and started doing different things, actually. Eventually figured out I liked math, but I couldn't stand math teachers. Okay, because they were always about like just making you do a procedure. Okay, and math in a certain way is about art and creativity. Okay, and so. But there's going to be people who like really get numbers, and then there's other people that numbers is just something you kind of have to do to get through the world. And honestly, this book's going to appeal more to the numbers type person. But having said that, I believe that once you've learned addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, the next math you need to learn is 80-20, and nobody teaches it. Okay. Now, yeah, a lot of people have heard of it, but really nobody really unpacks this to look at it the way that it really is. And I just came to believe that this is really the centerpiece of marketing. And let me explain why. Okay, so 80-20 says that 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts, and the other 80% of your efforts are only going to get 20% of your results. Well, so first of all, that is not, 80-20 is not a rule of thumb or this business school abstraction. It's a law of cause and effect. Okay? 80-20 is why there's a Grand Canyon.
Okay, will
Okay.
you explain that?
Okay.
What does that mean?
So 80% of the water flows through 20% of the path.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
got
right.
it.
And you look at a tree, behind me here in the window, 80% of the sap runs through 20% of the branches.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If I have a bucket of rocks, 20% of the rocks take up 80% of the space.
And I read somewhere you did a quick survey with women in your audience and their shoes.
Yeah, 80% of the shoes are owned by 20% of the women, and it's also it's everywhere. It is absolutely everywhere. And what I hope people do when they read this book is that for the first time they actually see it. Okay, and I'm getting people now, they're writing Amazon reviews and things, and they're saying, oh my word, I see it now, it's everywhere, I can't miss it. Yeah, 80% of the traffic runs on 20% of the roads. Okay, 80% of the time that you spend every day is in 20% of the rooms in your house. Okay, 80% of your conversations are with 20% of your friends, and 80% of the donations are from 20% of the church members, and it just goes on and on and on. Okay, and so this is it's the math of cause and effect, and it's not really complicated math. Okay, it's like, well, all right, so the 20% that produce the results are actually 16 times as effective as the 80% that don't. Okay, so if 80% of your sales come from 20% of your salespeople, or your retail stores, or your distributors, or your sales reps, or whoever,
or your affiliates, if you're
your affiliates, okay,
online stuff, right?
If 80% comes from 20%, that means the 20% are 16 times more effective than the 80%. Okay? And isn't business about cause and effect? Isn't marketing about cause and effect? Like, we're trying to get ourselves seen, and we're trying to spend our energy in places that work and not the ones that don't. Okay, so you've got to see this, right? And if you want rocks, then you have to know where the 80-20 of where the rocks are. And if you want customers, you need the 80-20 where the customers are. Well, here's where it gets interesting. And your mind will kind of flip if you completely understand it, is that when you do an 80-20 and you go, oh, okay, so I got these 1,000 affiliates, or I got these 1,000 sales reps, or I got these 1,000 customers, and 80% of the money comes from 20% of them. Well, now here's what's interesting. So now we get rid of the other 80%, and we're only looking at the 20%, and 80-20 is still true of what we got left. So 80% of the 80% produces 20% of the 20%. And then I can get rid of the bottom 20% of that. So now I'm only dealing with 4%. Okay? And guess what? 4% will produce 64%. Because 64 is 80% of 80%. Well, it just keeps going and keeps going until you run out of people. Now, by the time you got down to one salesperson or one affiliate or one customer, then you're done. It doesn't go any further. But I started to see that people are leaving all kinds of money on the table because they're treating everybody equally. And you take a typical business owner, a typical salesperson, they're spending all this time with people that have proven through their history, through their behavior, they are not going to spend a lot of money. They are not going to be effective. You are not going to get much. And they're calling and they're asking for stuff, and there's tech support and there's customer service and there's all this stuff. And you know what? You're not. You're actually losing money by selling to them. You would actually do better to refuse to take their money and go to the other person. You will find that almost always this is true, that you've got these squeaky wheels and they suck up all this time and energy, and then you got these other customers. They quietly, their order comes in and the stuff ships out and you never hear from them, and they spend a lot of money and they're so quiet you don't even pay attention to them.
And they're giving you 80% of the money is what
They're
you're saying.
giving you an enormous amount of money.
And so to reverse that, can I just say that 80% of your 20% of your problems come from the other 80%? How does that work? Because it's the same thing, right? You get all the problems from the same set of people.
Right. So you can do an 80-20 on any criteria you want, okay? Sales is one criteria, but how about support tickets?
Mm-hmm.
Or how about complaints? Or how about people starting nasty rumors that aren't even true, or saying bad things about you, or how about shoplifting, or how about employees stealing stuff from you? Well, that's 80-20 too. 80% of the theft comes from 20% of the thieves. And 80% of the support tickets comes from 20% of the people doing the support tickets. So once you sort of put on your 80-20 glasses and you go, okay, so let's sort this according to that. And what you'll quickly find out is there might be some customers that chew up lots of time, but they actually give you lots of money, okay? All right, so maybe that's okay. But then there's these other people, and like, wow. They're like, think of it like this. I bet most of your misery and frustration and everything comes from like 5 people.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
If you just got rid of the 5 people or the 5 customers, or you've got this employee and like you wake up in the morning and you look at the ceiling and you go, oh, I got to go deal with her again. You know what? Get rid of her. Okay. She's probably unhappy too.
Yeah. Okay. I interviewed Julia Cameron. She wrote The Artist's Way, if you're familiar, because you talked about creativity.
Oh, I know that book.
Yeah. So
it's like about journaling and stuff?
Yeah, but we talked about it in terms of also marketing and business and how you bring but she would call those crazy makers. And
yes.
Right? And like get rid of the crazy makers in your life because they just destroy, you put so much focus and energy there.
Right, and most of us live with some kind of sense of obligation that if somebody comes and asks us for something, that we just need to say yes. And that's not true. 80-20 says that you should be saying no 4/5 of the time. Okay,
wow.
and look,
I think you have to say that again, because that's, I think for entrepreneurs, we feel like we need to do whatever it takes to get the sale. And when we're out there marketing and selling, it's like, I mean, here's a great example. I had somebody that I haven't heard from in a long time who didn't pay me the last time, and they're asking to do business with me again. And my first inclination is, how can I get some money from this person? But of course, when you stop and look at it, it's like, no, it's going to be more craziness, right? Right.
So in the book, I put it on a curve. Okay. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'll just it looks like this. Okay. Which maybe you can see, that little curve there. Okay, so, there's a point on the curve, and it's kind of at the 80% mark, and everything on the left side, everything you put in, you only get 1/4 out of what you put in. And everything on the right side of that curve, on that high 20% part, everything you put in, you get 4 times out what you put in. Mm-hmm. Okay, so 4 out of 5 things you say yes to, you're going to get a bad return on investment. 1 out of 5 things you say yes to is going to produce a good return on investment. Oh. So that means you should be in the business of saying no.
Now, because I think so many entrepreneurs and salespeople and marketing people are just in overwhelm. So many choices. This is really key, I think. How do you choose? How do you know where to say yes?
Well, this is the most overwhelmed generation ever.
Yep.
Okay. And I know everybody wants to give a speech about this is the whatever generation, or maybe it's good and maybe it's bad, but I think we can all agree we have literally 1,000 times the choices that our parents had. 1,000 times, okay? Well, the truth is vast majority of us are consumed and paralyzed by the choices. Okay? It's like, oh, there's this thing on Yelp, and there's all these restaurants, and there's Facebook, and these people are pinging me, and okay, the world is in conspiracy to get your attention. Okay? And I'm a marketer. I know this. I'm in a conspiracy to get everybody's attention. Okay, so like, all right, so that's the game. Well, I think one of the keys to being successful is you have to fast from a lot of the choices that are available to you. Like on Sundays, I don't open my computer. I take Sundays off. And yesterday was Sunday. I took a 2.5 hour nap. Completely narcissistic, okay? Why? Because it's Sunday. It's my day off, and that's what I do. And everybody can't get a hold of me, and I'm not available, and I'm not going to sit there and answer emails, okay? And like, you have to shut off a lot of things. You should be unsubscribing from piles of stuff that's in your email box. Piles of it. 80% of it is wasting your time. If you unsubscribed from 80% of the stuff in your email box, you would not miss much of it. Okay? And I'm telling you, you will either do this, you will either like deliberately say no to a bunch of things, or you will be a slave to the machine. And I am not exaggerating. I am not joking. You will fritter away your life doing minimally effective, reacting to everything, and you never get anything done.
That's a good point, reaction. Now, I also want to say that people should subscribe to you and me, because they'll get 80% of their results, right?
Well, you know, I have probably the most common comment that I get about my email list is, I've subscribed to dozens of people, and 5 years later, you're the only one left. And I hear that over and over and over. And I asked my subscribers probably a month ago, I said, so what should I do like to communicate this to people? And most of them said, you know what? Let them find out the hard way that most of those other people are going to suck them dry and leave them destitute, because frankly, most people are not ready to listen to real advice anyway. And you know what? It's probably true.
Well, and when you said reactive, that's really key, because we get stuff in our email box that says, buy this now. If you're not making $1 million, buy this right now, or you're going to like fall in a heap on the floor, right? I mean, it is so over the top stuff. Right. And really, you bring a sense of reason, and I bring a sense of reason about get rid of all the clutter and do what works for you. And part of the 80-20 rule, at least how I understand it, is finding out what works for you and where where your personal results come from, because it isn't a one. I mean, there's some cookie cutter stuff out there, but then we have to make it how it's applicable to us in our lives.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because one of the things that's included with the book, there's a bunch of bonuses in the book that you get. And I think they're really valuable bonuses. That's not always the case with books, but I think the most valuable one is the marketing DNA test. Michelle, we haven't rehearsed this or anything.
No, but I've done it. I have. I've taken it, and now you're.
What did it tell you about yourself, or what did it confirm that you should be doing or not doing?
You know, the thing that really I keep coming back to for me and a lot of my clients is that when we're focused on so many busy details, we're skipping the vision. And that's when we go into overwhelm. And I don't remember if it's called Visionary or what the title is, but
He's an alchemist.
Alchemist, yes.
Yes,
But
yes.
what I keep getting for me is I have to stay in the vision of where I'm going, and then the thing that I need to do rises to the top.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
but maybe you can clarify. But I notice it for my clients too. It's when you're trying to answer the 200 emails, you lose where you're going.
Yeah. Well, the marketing DNA test is it's a test that says how do you naturally persuade? Okay, since most people that read this book are marketers, well, people persuade a lot of different ways. Some people persuade with proof, charts,
Yeah,
graphs,
that wasn't me.
data, right? Okay, and if that's how you sell, then guess what? You should not be doing timeshare pitches
Right.
someplace. Okay, you should you should be working in a situation where people appreciate that you sell with numbers and proof and data, and you should be selling to people who want numbers and proofs and data. Okay, there's other people. Let's take the timeshare salesman. There's a kind of person that I call them a hostage negotiator. You put them in a live situation with a bunch of people and you tell them this is the result we got to get, and they will somehow, if they have to pound it out of everybody, they'll get it done. Okay, and that's how they sell, and they should not be in a situation where they have to be, making spreadsheets and doing what the other guy does, right? There's some people that are writers. There's some people that are really video producers. There's some people who are extremely empathetic and they just connect with people's emotions and heartstrings. Okay, and all of those are 80/20s. Okay, that if you're the proof guy, 80% of your of your results is going to come from the 20% of the really hardcore, proof that and there's some products that really require that, right? And so there's a 20% of the world where that corner of the world is where you belong. Okay, and so and most of us we have several of these zones, not just one, and you combine them together. And that's where the explosive potential is. And I'm going, man, if I had this 15 or 20 years ago, I would have saved 5 or 10 years
Wow.
of wasting stuff in my life, And so it totally applies to giftedness. So there's not only the clutter and the time management and picking which customers to spend time with. Okay, there's that, but there's also your gifts, and so if you have some natural ability as a writer, then a 20% investment in your writing skill will produce an 80% increase. And even after you're a good writer, it's still true. You could be a good writer, but then you invest more time and you become a great writer, and you're not killing yourself. And so I believe if you really apply 80/20 in all these dimensions of your life, you're going to get so much more done with so much less stress.
I love this because I do marketing archetypes, and it's a little different but a little the same of what you do, in that you got to focus on your gifts and what's working, and it's not like cut in stone, so we have more than one thing that we can focus on, but when we find the 2 or 3 places to focus, we can get rid of the 20 others. And writing
Yes.
is so important. If you're good at writing, write. If you're not good at writing, don't blog. For heaven's sakes, don't do
Yes.
it, right?
Yes. I've got I've got a couple of guys that work for me. They're okay writers, but what they're really good at is selling in the moment. Their brain moves so fast that sitting at a computer keyboard is like torture because they can't get it out. Now, I don't actually think that fast. You put me in a live sales situation where I got to be a hostage negotiator, I can't move fast enough in order to respond to everything. You put me by a keyboard where I have a little bit of time to sort things out as I say what I need to say, and and that works for me. And so yeah, and so if you can get rid of the self-condemnation that comes from, so if we make a list of 100 different marketing tasks, right? There's a gazillion of them. There's Google Analytics, and there's being a telemarketer, and there's writing blog posts, and there's all.
Right.
If we made a list of 100, 80% of your results are going to come from 20 of them. And 80% of those are going to come from 4 of them. So figure out the 4 marketing tasks out of 100 that you're really good at, and then either join a team or build a team around you to do the other stuff. And no, you do not have to do everything. You should not do everything. You will kill yourself if you try to do everything. And guess what? There's people that love what you hate.
I love that. Yeah, perfect.
They love it. I have an accountant. I have a CPA. I would jump off a bridge if I had to be a CPA. But I love her. She's great. And she loves her job, right? So
that's great. So I want to ask you, Perry, because you've got such great marketing advice. I need a bit of personal advice. I'm headed to Chicago Thursday. What's the one thing I shouldn't miss in Chicago?
Well, you know what? I have a page, perrymarshall.com/Chicago.
Wow. Oh, cool.
I do.
Okay.
So I'll tell you a weird one that nobody would ever tell you.
Oh, perfect.
Go to Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind at the Neo Futurarium.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, they're like, I never heard of that. That is the
I'm
longest running show in Chicago.
Okay. You like to travel. You've been, I know, to India. I've been to India. You've been to Asia. I think, did you go to Vietnam?
I've never been to Vietnam.
Where did you just come
China.
back from? I've been to China.
I was in Peru a couple of weeks ago. I took my boys there. But probably 30 countries. I love traveling.
Why do you love traveling so much?
Because it shakes up your paradigms. It challenges your assumptions. In fact, it's not as true now. First few times that I went out of the country, it was massive, it was like sticking a mixer in my brain and just turning it on. First place I went was Brazil, and then after that I went to China, and it's so different, right? But I got to tell you, I really believe that when you just fling yourself out of your comfort zone, it so enriches your perspective. Okay. When I was maybe 14, I got this assignment in school. I had to write a paper on 2 countries, one being the United States and the other one being some other country. So the one paper was on India, and the other one was, of course, on the United States. And my teacher said, well, you did a great job on India, and you did a lousy job in the United States, because a fish can't tell you about water.
Oh.
Okay? Okay?
Yeah, right.
Well, you live here. This is just normal. How do you write about normal? How do you critique normal? I'd never been anywhere. Okay, well, now that I've been to 30 countries, I can give you all kinds of perspectives on what Americans assume and what we do, and all of us, excuse the French, but all of us need to get challenged on our bullshit.
Yeah, we do. So
we've all got it.
Yeah. So I'm asking you that because I know you give. And one of my questions to the people I'm interviewing on this series is, if you had an extra $1 million laying around, who or what would you give it to, and why?
Well, Laura and I adopted a little girl almost 2 years ago from China. So we have got 4 regular kids and a Chinese kid. Well, there's a lot of good causes. I don't think there's very many that produce more profound results than adoption. especially, well, really anywhere, okay? I mean, you could be adopting a kid right from the United States. You could adopting from Guatemala or Ethiopia or whatever. But I'll tell you what, those orphanages are not cheerful places.
They're not.
I know.
They're not.
I can promise you. You spend whatever it is, 10 to 30,000 bucks probably, and you take a kid in, that is like infinite radical change of their life forever. And another comment about that is it's the kids with special needs and the older kids that are hard to adopt out. And there's a bunch of them, and if you go into there's a huge adoption blogosphere. Just go type adoption blog and start following the rabbit trails. There are so many kids that are like, I'm 10 years old. At age 12, I age out of the system. I got 2 years, and if I can't get parents by then I won't ever get parents. I won't ever get a family.
Perry, I don't know if you know, I used to write for adoptionblogs.com. I know, yeah, I know that, I think we've talked about this before. I also adopted, and I was a foster parent for a long time. And so,
God bless you.
You're talking about things that are, dear to my heart, and God bless you too. Thank you, Perry. The book is available for a penny. I have to get back to work here. Sell8020.com, SELL8020.com. And you can find out all about Chicago, apparently, at perrymarshall.com/Chicago. So I'm going to do that. Thank you so much for being on the show, Perry. And bless you for the work you do, for the marketing brilliance. And I'll look forward to talking with you some more.
Well, thank you, Michelle. It's been a real pleasure. You asked great questions today.